Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, we're going to do some stitching with a somewhat found object. We're going to use felt coasters. These are felt shapes usually sold in packs of 4, and they're designed to be used as coasters. They're kind of an inexpensive quasi-coaster, but they're really interesting. Made of felt, they're a textile, and I thought they'd look great in the slow stitching projects that I create. I like to incorporate different found objects and different textile items that maybe weren't intended to use in stitching. I think it adds some interest. Now these coasters are a little bit thick. They're about 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe slightly less. And so they do add a little dimension. But they come in different colors and shapes. You can also take apart the shapes, which is what we're going to do today. And it gives a different look. I'll show you how I do it, how I take apart the shape and add some unusual abstract elements to my slow stitching. I think it's kind of unique and it produces a great result. So let's get started.
So these are the coasters that I'm talking about, the little felt coasters. They come out seasonally. These were like a spring issue, but they'll have different shapes, perhaps leaves as well. But I just felt that they were very interesting little textile creations. So I'll just open it to show you. They're all very similar, different colors or shapes, and they have got this little ribbon holding it all together. And then it's just a fairly thick felt, and they market it as a coaster. It's flexible, a little stiff, but pretty flexible, and I just thought it was great to use in your slow stitching. So let me show you a couple of ideas. You can use it whole, as they are, or you can cut them up, and that's what we're going to do today. So here's an example of how you can take the coaster and cut it up, and you have different shapes. So it starts out as the flower. I just cut out the center here, so now I have a little sprocket I can use, or a smaller piece. I have this outer piece. It's kind of pretty. I can have a beautiful flower stitched in the center as well. With this one, with the pointy flowers, I thought that was really beautiful. And if I cut it in half, I have a very interesting piece. And I can cut it and make other pieces from it. So I have that small piece on the side here, and if I wanted to cut that piece, I'd cut it down, and then I just do a little bit of surgery here and shave off the pieces just to get that rounded effect. And so then I have something like a little lotus that I can use in my work. And each set comes with 4 coasters, so you can have a lot of variation. Today I cut these down even further. So I took one of these and I cut it down. And they do tend to get away from you. But then I have this little oblong shape, which I thought was rather interesting in its own right. And that's what I'm going to use today in my piece, just to show you how I use it, because I do think it's really fascinating. I love working with the various textiles, no matter what they are. So now I've started this little piece of slow stitching. It's just a piece of batting with some fabric, and I layered some collage on it. I had this little piece of ribbon that I just love, partial to flamingos anyway, so I attached it down, stitched around it, and then picked up some of the colors to use in the stitching over here, as well as a French knot there, echoing the dots in the background fabric. I have this little label that I stitched that I might use in my work. We'll see. It coordinates with the colors here, but I wanted to add these to my piece. I thought it was a very interesting abstract element to my work here. I can figure out exactly how I want them, and then decide if I want that label or not. So to attach these, the beauty of them is you can stitch through them, or you can use a couching stitch to stitch around them. And I think I'm going to use the couching stitch. So I found some thread that coordinated quite nicely. I'm using all 6 strands, and I threaded my needle here. So roughly, I want my pieces to look like this. So I'll start with this bottom piece here. You could pin it into place. I'm just going to hold it in place. And I'll just stitch a couple of couching stitches just to anchor it in place. And then I can always go back and add decorative stitches as well. So that holds it in place. And then I'll just continue stitching the remaining pieces. And I can add as many of these as I want just to give that very interesting effect. It's just an abstract element to add to my work, something unexpected and unusual. Now with the stitching, because I'm stitching the couching stitch, I'm coming up from behind it and going over it. I'm not stitching at all through the piece. I can put this down here. Just tack that down. And so now my pieces are stabilized, and now I can go back in and add some stitching to hold it down some further. So I'll do that off camera. I can then decide if I want to add my label as well. So this is how it looks when it's stitched down. I decided to add the label. I don't think I'm quite done with this piece, but I certainly like the way it's coming out, and I love those colors. The gray, the yellow, and the light teal. They're quite beautiful together. Now this is just one way to use the pieces. You could use them whole or cut in half. So let me show you some of those variations. Here's a little piece where I took the entire coaster and stitched it down. I just did the couching stitch all the way around, and then I added different rings of different colors that picked up on that fabric. I added additional stitching to the background fabric to make it come alive, the button, and then I echoed that shape over here in a little patch. I think that came out adorable. It's a different way to use that coaster as something other than a coaster. And then I have this piece here. Now let me change my camera so you can see the entire piece. So this is a much bigger wall hanging here. I added one whole coaster, I cut up the others, and used half here. And I echoed the color with different stitches. I made like a little halo around each of the shapes to really emphasize it, and then pulled color from both the coasters and the colors in the background fabric. I really love how that came out. It's just very soothing and enjoyable. I'm considering adding stitched words, or I'll stitch directly on the piece in these areas here, but I'm not quite sure yet, so that's why it's not complete. But I like having pieces of work that I've done that are in various stages of completion, because sometimes I'll know exactly what to do just by looking at the piece. Like today, coming up with those words, I think that'll be a nice addition. And so on, and so I can go through my pieces and see what needs it. I like the addition here of these coasters. I just think it adds something completely different, and it's another way to use a textile product that wasn't intended for use in stitching.
So that's how I use the felt shapes in my slow stitching, the coasters. I think it produces a great result, and I like the fact that I can cut them down to size or change them up just with a few snips of the scissors. They're really kind of fascinating to use in your work. You can stitch through them, or you can add a couching stitch to hold them in place, and you can coordinate different aspects of your piece with those coasters. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Please consider becoming a paid member of my channel, and thank you for joining me today.